Hey, this is Mr. Mitchell with another wrap-up video, I guess you might say, in social studies. Go ahead and write down the questions. This video is filled with terms about government and trade. Now these are terms that we haven't gone over much, and you can see on this first page there are three terms here: autocracy, oligarchy, and democracy. Now the one you're familiar with is democracy, so let's start with it and learning the others. In a democracy, you can see here kind of the cute little image. You have all these people. The people are the ones that control the government. People have elections, people elect who they want to, they vote. They are the ones where the people, the many, determine or run the government. Democracy, many people, the citizens, run the government. And there are a lot of democracies in the world now. There are none too few of this next one, oligarchy. And you can see from this picture here kind of what's going on here. Instead of rule by all the citizens, it's rule by just a few. This probably was more applicable way back in the Middle Ages when you had nobles in some countries where they banded together to control all the land. But you really just don't see many applications in the modern world. But hey, this is in the standards, so it'd be good for you to know what an oligarchy is, just as a comparison and to be able to know it. You can probably figure out what an autocracy is. You can see an autocracy is rule by one person, like a king or a dictator. So you find some of those every once in a while in today's world. Let's look at some other terms that have to do with government. Okay, we have the main distinction here is going to be between a presidential democracy. That's awful. I need to just erase that. That's just even worse than I would normally have. A presidential democracy and a parliamentary democracy. Now, they look similar. I mean, we have a presidential democracy and Britain has a parliamentary democracy, and Canada does too. But they look similar, but here are the differences. In a presidential democracy, the people vote on a Senate, a Congress, a House of Representatives, a lawmaking body like a parliament would be down here. But the people also elect the president. It is not this group of senators or House of Representatives that do the electing of the president. It is the people that elect the president. And that's going to be the big difference between presidential and parliamentary. Parliamentary democracy, you still have people electing the members of parliament, like our Senate and House of Representatives, but it is not the people that elect the president. You can see, well, I guess I could say the prime minister. You've heard that term before as far as Australia and Canada and Britain. They have a prime minister who is not elected by the people. The prime minister is elected by the people in the parliament. He or she is already a member of parliament, and they're kind of the leader of the parliament, who is kind of like a president in that they are the person who is the face of the main leader in that country. And I've been telling people that a prime minister is kind of like a president, and you know he or she is, but this is the difference. In a presidential democracy, the people elect the main leader, the president. In a parliamentary democracy, it's not the people, it is the parliament that elects it. Now you may have noticed we have some other terms here. We have two kinds of presidential democracies, and we don't even have to look overseas for that. We have a federal democracy. The United States is a federal democracy. Now, in the United States, the national government is located here, right about here. This is where Washington, D.C. is. Now, Washington, D.C. makes up laws. The Senate makes up laws, but it is a shared power. It's not just the national government that makes up laws. The laws of Georgia are made up by Georgia senators. The laws of Texas, the laws of each state has a shared power with the national government. It's not just the national government that makes the laws. It's not just the state government that makes the laws, which probably means you can guess what is happening with these next two. A confederation, and we actually had one of these whenever we had the Civil War. You know, the South seceded from the North. The South was a confederation. Even though there was a capital here in Richmond, the main governing was from each individual state. Each individual state made their own laws, and it could conflict with other laws. And what would supersede would be the laws of each individual state. So here in Georgia, the laws that Georgia's Senate wanted passed is what they passed, regardless of what was in the national government. The national government was there just kind of for defense and for trade. So you can probably figure out what a unitary government is. A unitary government is like it is in Britain. Now in Britain you can see they have all kinds of states or provinces, just like we have all kinds of states and provinces, except it is not the state government that has the national power. It is the national government that has it. Wherever the capital is, London, is where all the laws are made that has to do with every single one of these provinces. The provinces just don't have the say-so. So just as a review, the national government has all the say-so in a unitary democracy. The state government has all the say-so in a confederation, and the powers are shared by national and state government in a federal democracy. Now let's take a look at some trade terms. Here are some trade terms that, well, you know, don't really apply as much today. You know, today we often have free trade agreements. And I don't know why I'm putting green upon green, but the free trade agreement we happen to be in is NAFTA. You've heard us talk about the European Union. You've heard us talk about the free trade agreements that the Australians have. But a free trade agreements pretty much don't have all these three terms, but we do want you to know them. A tariff is a tax on imports. And put simply, let's say this. Let's say a country was making these pretty little Snoopy socks, and they wanted to sell their Snoopy socks around the world. So let's say they shipped 1,000 Snoopy socks to the United States. If the United States had a tariff on it, which they probably don't for many countries right now, but if the United States had a tariff on it, then they would have to pay extra people would have to pay extra for each sock. It's like a tax that would be on anything gotten from another country. Here's another thing that can limit what is being traded. It's a quota. A quota is a specific amount. And you don't see this very much anymore. But let's say the U.S. government, for whatever reason, only wanted a specific amount of these Snoopy socks to be put into the United States from abroad. They wanted all the Snoopy socks to be made in the United States, except they did allow, say, 1 million of them. So they could ship these Snoopy socks here and try to sell them, but there's only a certain number that would be allowed, and that's called a quota. And finally, an embargo. Now, we do have an embargo with Cuba. We do not have trade with Cuba. You may remember us talking about that. And usually embargoes have to do with politics. They don't really have to do much at all with what is being traded. Sure, you could have these Snoopy socks made in Cuba, but the United States is not buying them. So it really, when you have an embargo, you are not trading at all with that country, or you're not trading for a certain product, and usually it's just not the country at all. Hey, I hope you've learned a little bit about these government terms: oligarchy, autocracy, democracy, these three kinds of democracies, and the trade terms. Don't forget to do the questions.